Welcome back to the Where You're Planted podcast. I'm your host, Molly McManamy. Apologizing in advance for the way that I sound today. I am just praying that I get through this without sneezing or some other annoying bodily function. But I did not want to reschedule or miss out on today's episode because I'm really excited about the topic that we are going to discuss today. It is definitely something that I think leads people to lead the church or feel uncomfortable in church. And it's an area where I think the church in general and Christians in general can improve on how they treat people, the rhetoric around it, just generally reframing the way that we see this. So I have my friend Joel Adams here.
Hello,
Hi, Joel.
hello. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We'll know in about an hour.
Good enough to be here to talk about this. So
Exactly.
we're going to talk to Joel today about getting divorced, and specifically getting divorced as a believer in the church and in the church community.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's one of those things that's, I think when we were texting earlier, it's just like, it happens more often than I think most people realize.
What's
But
the statistic now? Do you know? It's like, I know it's always around 50%, right?
So, yeah, I mean, I guess nationwide it's around 50%. I don't know what it is in the church, but I think it's, I think there's a bunch of factors with that, which we can probably get into, but I think it's still one of those things, it's pretty taboo, I think, in the church.
Yeah.
Even though it's like the unsaid, unspoken scarlet letter, it feels
Yeah.
like
No
sometimes.
one comes out and says, like, I hate divorce, or if you're divorced, you're a terrible person. But it's more like the nonverbal kind of the way you're treated. It's similar in some regards to being single at a certain age.
Oh, sure.
And you're obviously experiencing that aspect of it also.
Yeah.
But it's like there's something like the church is just kind of obsessed with marriage. And that's not a bad thing. Marriage is wonderful. God loves marriage.
Mm-hmm.
We know that. But things happen and humans happen.
Sure.
And humans are imperfect. So marriages are going to be imperfect. And unfortunately, there are so many instances where people get into it and maybe don't know exactly what it entails, or people change, people's beliefs change. So it's not in my head or in my heart inherently wrong. And I hope that today's conversation will make someone feel more comfortable if they are divorced or maybe considering it and are in the church community.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's one of those things that I think it's lack of preparation leads to more divorce
Yeah.
than anything else. And
That's a good way to put it. I'm excited to unpack that.
it's a lot to unpack.
So just for context, because I do think it's important, because you were not just going to church, but you used to work in the church, correct?
Yeah. So I was a youth pastor and college pastor for 14 years.
Okay. Where is it? Was it here in Vegas?
So I was here in Vegas, just outside of Vegas. So yeah, when I was pastoring and
So you were young then when you were doing that.
oh yeah, I was
Okay.
really young. So I actually got married the day before I turned 21.
Oh, wow.
And then
Okay,
I
that's
started
important.
ministry about 4 months later.
So
full
how
time.
long did you know your ex-wife before you guys got married?
For 2 years, I believe, 2.5 years.
And did you guys meet in the church?
We did. We actually met in a college ministry at
Okay.
the church we were going to.
That's a good way to meet someone. Like, that's kind of how they encourage you to meet people.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great way now. Now that I'm 42, it's kind of a creepy way to meet somebody. But yeah, it was good back then.
That's funny. So you were a pastor at the time. Well, so you met her before you started full-time ministry, but you were preparing to start full-time ministry.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And then you guys got married very young. Was she also young?
Yeah. So she was a couple years older than I was. So she was 23 when we got married.
Okay. So without having to spill all the dirty details, all of her business, your business, like, what was the gist of what ultimately led you guys to decide that divorce was the right call?
I mean, it's such a convoluted thing. There isn't really one thing that you can nail down.
That's also,
It'd be really nice if it was one thing.
I think that's everyone probably can relate to that. That's either even gone through a breakup. It's usually not one thing.
Right. There's a a foundation and a barrier and you've piled on 40 things and then, something ultimately kind of pushes it over the edge. I think for me in the situation that I was in, it ended up being where, I mean, no shade on anybody, but if you're not continually working on the relationship together and individually as people, then the relationship's going to be broken at a certain point.
Yeah.
And to own my own stuff in regards of that is that had been building up for a long time. I think on both sides,
Yeah.
and both going through different aspects in that. So, yeah, I mean, it was sad, exhausting, frustrating.
And you had 3 kids with your ex-wife, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And
So I have
so
3 girls.
you have 3 daughters. I'm sure that aspect of it made it like extremely hard.
Yeah, it was heart wrenching. I mean, unfortunately, you go through divorce and you have kids, then you have to talk about custody and what that looks like, and then it
Hmm.
becomes, combative, who gets what time, and all that stuff. And when we first got separated before we actually started the divorce proceedings, I kind of said to myself, so just a little bit of a backstory. So I was in the ministry for 14 years. In the ministry, I was very unhealthy, mentally speaking. So when I stepped out of the ministry, and that's probably another show why it did, but when I did, I was having at least 2 to 3 panic attacks, massive panic attacks a week.
A week?
A week.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we will definitely do an episode on that.
Yeah.
I actually have wanted to talk to some people that have left full-time ministry for that reason. I was just reading something today about teachers that leave teaching for similar reasons.
Yep.
And it's kind of sad to see how mentally exhausting some of what's supposed to be the most rewarding professions are. And we need people in those spaces,
Right,
but
yeah.
they can be very unhealthy. So you had some personal things that were going on that had you been married, whatever, you would have already been just in a bad mental place because of
Yeah.
what you were doing for work at the time.
Yeah. And so when I had stepped out, we were still together and living together for maybe about a year and a half afterwards. But obviously, there was years of built up unhealth in the relationship. There was, the cracks were there if you could dug deep. We put on a really good show, in my opinion.
Most people do,
And
especially in
so,
the church.
right, especially in ministry and on stage, we're good. We got 3 beautiful girls, and everything's great. And everything, we get home and don't talk to each other. So in that process, the moment that we actually separated, I said to myself, I'm going to do everything I can to be as healthy as I can. So at that point, I was probably about 50 pounds heavier than I was, and had been at that, 250, 255 pounds.
And what year was this that you guys decided to separate? So how long ago was it?
7 years ago, 8 years
Okay.
ago.
So not like that long ago.
Yeah. So, I mean, the weight was one thing, mental health was one thing. And so I immediately got into eating healthier, started seeing a counselor by myself personally, started going to Celebrate Recovery at our church for codependency. and
I didn't
healing and
even know
navigating
that was part of Celebrate Recovery.
Yeah. I'd
That's
say,
good to know.
I'd say codependency, in my personal experience, is the basis and through line on everything.
I could agree with that.
And
I could agree with
so that was by far the biggest issue that I had to go through. And ultimately, that was a big part of where my anxiety came from,
Did you have codependency issues with your wife specifically?
with my wife and people in general.
Okay.
I
yeah.
have that
I
tendency.
can relate to this. So
Yeah.
just so you know, you're not alone there.
No. And I think it's the one thing that's really not talked about and explained effectively, because we think of codependent, the vast majority, we think, oh, the other person is a drug addict or the
Yeah.
other person's alcoholic. It's like, no. If I'm basing my feelings off of you being okay, that's codependent
Whether
behavior
it's
and unhealthy. Yeah.
I struggle with that, just being transparent, and it's one of the main things that I talk about with my therapist about, and started actually talking to my family about it, and I'm so happy that I discovered it pre getting married,
Yeah.
because I feel like I'm moving towards a much healthier version of myself already.
Mhm.
And I'm noticing more the triggers of what leads me to start diving back into that behavior. And I'm able to practice my tools with like my friends and my family. So I can totally see, had I gotten married at the age you did,
Yeah.
I would have struggled through that in my marriage as well.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing, at least with codependency from my experience, and I think that honestly, a through line, the reason I say a through line is because not only codependency, but unhealth in the church in general and Christians in general, is a lack of real awareness of identity.
Yeah.
I know that you were talking about on your podcast, you said no one should get married before they're 30.
I was gonna bring that up today. No, yeah,
I was laughing. And I was listening and I was like, kind of a fair point. I can understand that.
It's not a hard rule. I'll just make that clear. But for me personally, there was like this shift in searching for a healthier version of life around that age.
Yeah, no, and I think the biggest thing, the pushback that I would have, because I've met people that struggle with this no matter the age.
Oh
And
yeah,
I know people that are okay,
100%.
and I know
Yes.
people that have gotten married when they were 22 and they have the most amazing marriage. But the through line that I think is the precursor to that is knowing who you truly are and where your identity lies. And we all say, yes, as Christians, our identity lies in Christ. But how much of us are actually living that life?
Right.
And who I am as, I'm speaking third person, sound like an idiot, who I am as Joel inside, that is something that I allow God to define versus allowing other people and even sometimes my own expectations to define.
Absolutely.
And if you go into a relationship without that clear definition, your relationship will break down if you do not find that.
No, and I agree with you. I have friends who listen to the podcast and they know that I love their relationships and their marriages that did get married in their 20s.
Yeah.
But the difference is they are committed to their individual growth
Yep.
outside of their relationship growth. And they have been honest with each other, honest with me as like their friends in the struggles with that, in figuring out how, yeah, I'm growing from 25 to 27 and 27 to 30, but they communicate to each other. This is how I'm different now. This is how my needs have changed. This is how I've changed. This is what's important to me now versus what was important to me when I was 24 years old when you met me or whatever it was. And seeing those examples it's awesome to me because it really is not about age so much as it is that commitment to getting healthy and staying healthy and finding those things that make you just a better partner overall.
Yeah, and I think if we're not growing individually, all aspects are dying.
100%.
A long time ago, a mentor of mine told me you can't coast uphill. It doesn't work that way. And that's the way life is. That's the way relationships are.
Yep.
They're always changed. They're always defined. They're always moving. And you have to be able to grow to be able to navigate those things. No one's ever on a straight road forever. There's always a wind. There's always a bump. There's always something.
Thank God we're not.
Yeah.
I don't want to coast. Some days it would be nice, but and there are seasons of coasting, I think. There are seasons of growth. My therapist, I was talking to her about marriage, and she said a lot of people get married with this idea that it's about your happiness and the other person's happiness, which yes, you want happiness, but happiness is like kind of a fleeting emotion. There's other emotions that you should be more focused on. But what she said that stuck with me is marriage is about refinement. It's literally the same as what we commit to with Jesus when we become a Christian.
Yeah.
And that's to continuously die to yourself and to like serve the other person. And so if you cannot grow in the ways that you need to be able to refine yourself, it's probably going to hit a lot of roadblocks or it's not going to work. And that's why I struggle with the idea of secular marriage, if you will, because if you don't have that idea and that experience that us as like, genuine Christians have of constantly humbling yourself, it's going to get tough because egos are just going to get in the way and really make it difficult for you to constantly, like you're talking about, grow individually and then as a couple together in order to maintain something for a long period of time.
Yeah, and I think in that, the idea of being as healthy as I possibly could had to be, at a certain point, I said it at first, I'm like, I'm going to do this for my kids. I'm going to be as healthy as I can to the best of my ability for my kids. And that slowly shifted. So, I mean, it took a long time. I went through 2 different step studies through Celebrate Recovery, which is a year-long, intense discipleship program in a smaller group setting. So I did that for 2 years, or was involved in one and then led one right after that. Saw a therapist for a very long time, got as healthy as I can. I do triathlons and marathons and things like that. And it's literally for my mental health. It's not because I like doing it. I hate doing it. And it's so I don't become, when I say Fat Joel, he's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
He's always wanting to eat. But it shifted from I'm doing this for my children to I'm doing this for me. I still remember the day and where I was when I was able to look in the mirror for the very first time. I was 38 years old, and I was able to look across and see the person standing and say, I'm proud of this person.
Yeah. It's funny because you saying, like, even you doing it for your kids is still a little bit of codependency.
100%.
Right? It's like,
oh yeah,
it sounds selfless, but what people don't realize about codependency is it's very selfish.
Yes.
It's, I want peace within myself. So I'm going to make sure your life is okay and I fix you so that I can be at peace at night, not worry about if you're going to be alive the next morning.
Right.
That's the dramatic version, but you know what I mean? Or
No,
that
it
you're
is.
happy. And I didn't realize that aspect of it until I started doing the work. And I was like, oh yeah, this is all about me wanting to not have anxiety. And if I can control what's going on around me with everyone I love, then I won't have anxiety. But all it does is bring out more anxiety.
Totally. And that's where, it comes down to, going through the divorce process. Nobody comes unscathed.
Yeah. I'm a child of divorce. My parents got divorced when I was about 10 years old. And now looking back, and this is why I was really excited to talk about this with you, I respect them so much for it. And it was, I know it was so difficult for them. It was so difficult for us. But now that I'm an adult and I'm old enough to see what relationships really are,
Yeah.
I know they made the right decision. And I'm sure your girls, if they don't feel that way now, they will then. Because once you're an adult and you see your parents as adults, you're like, oh, you're very different people.
Totally.
How did this ever
right?
even work
Right?
out?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's true. It's, I remember when I was first in the idea of going through a divorce and knowing that it was coming, because I tried to work on it, tried to get us into counseling, doing that stuff.
Was it like last resort for you because of the tabooness of it?
I think so, on a certain level. Like, it was always like, okay, like, but at that point, the ship had already sailed.
Yeah.
It was already, but and the way I still define divorce is you're going through a living death.
Wow. Yeah.
So you are going through something that you will be mourning, and if you don't realize it, you'll be mourning it for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Because it's the death of the things that you've dreamed and the time and the energy and the prayers that you've put into. If we're going to be honest, since we were kids,
Yeah.
this is what I want my family to be. This is the life that I want my daughters to have. These are the Thanksgivings and the Christmases and the baptisms.
And this, you have to mourn that future
Always.
of like, okay, everything's different now than
Yeah.
what I thought it was going to be.
And listen, I love and respect my ex-wife for who she is and the mother she is. I don't
Yeah.
want to be with her anymore, and that's fine because the feeling's mutual. That's why we're not together.
That's awesome.
But but there's part of me that is like, man, like that still sucks.
Yeah.
It's still tough because.
Do you think a lot of people stay married to that idea versus the person?
Oh yeah, I think absolutely. I think there's things we find excuses of why to quote unquote stay together rather than excuses and reasons on why we need to work on ourselves.
Right.
And why we need to look at each other and be like, okay, we're going to do this together, or are we just going to live this existence?
Right. And just like slowly,
which to me is so much
decay.
more unhealthy.
Yeah. For everybody.
Yeah, everybody involved. And it's not just like, I know people that are married, do not have kids, and have an extremely volatile, unhealthy relationship.
Yeah.
And they continue doing it. And you know who it affects? Everybody around them.
Oh yeah.
All the friends.
Not even just
because
marriages,
I'm sure you've been
relationships.
to, house parties where you're just hanging out and having fun, and then there's some type of, and you could just tell the awkward tension is like.
Or you're just hanging out and they just like every time you're around them, they put each other down in public and you're just so
100%.
physically uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And you just want to be like, guys, you like almost want to film them
Yeah.
and show them. Cause I think when you get that deep in, you don't realize how you are coming off or how you're behaving because it's become so normal. And that's so sad, but they are not, I don't think anyone's trying to be that couple. You just end up there
No.
slowly.
Well, because we, as people, it's better when someone else has looked like the idiot or whatever. It's like going through the divorce. People come to me and say stuff, or did you know about this, or did you see this on Instagram or whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Man.
And my reaction always, and still to this day, listen, I know there's things that I do that she doesn't like, and there's
Yeah.
things that I probably don't agree with, and we work it out together. And listen, I'll say this. I think we have a very healthy co-parenting relationship.
And that's a blessing.
99% of the time, literally, thank you, God, it's very healthy and very good. But I always say, whatever she's doing is whatever she's doing.
Yeah.
I'm going to do everything I can to keep my side of the street clean. That's my responsibility. Her job is to keep her side of the street as clean as possible.
And the only time you guys need to like worry is when it affects your children.
100%.
And if you guys, like you said, 99% of the time are co-parenting well, that probably means your parenting values,
Line up pretty
idea,
well.
yeah, the things you want for your kids, the standards that you've set for them are pretty much good across the board.
Yeah, I mean, and not to toot our own horn, but I will a little bit in regards of like my kids are amazing.
Yeah.
And I
You're
know
allowed to
every
toot that
parent's,
horn.
I know everybody says that, but quite literally, they're universally loved by friends, family members,
Yeah.
teachers. I mean, my youngest kid is in 5th grade. Her 4th grade teacher was moving up to teach 5th grade, and she's like, "Can Sydney be in my class again?"
I love
Because
that.
she wants that. So those are the kids we've raised. And so I always say, for everything that my ex-wife and I screwed up, we made beautiful, healthy children.
Good kids that are
And
going to do good things in the world.
if that's all I get out of it, then that's a win at the end of the day.
My mom and dad had a rough go when they got divorced. So they got divorced when I was about 10, 11. And then it wasn't until I graduated college, I was 21. So over a decade, they really couldn't be in the same place at the same time. I would have 2 graduation parties. I'd have 2 birthday parties, whatever it was. And on my college graduation, I said, I'm having one brunch. Whoever shows up,
Good for you.
come. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. All 4 of my grandparents were alive. And that's kind of what drove it for me, because I was like, I know if I have 2, my grandparents are going to be in different places. I want to have a photo with all 4 of my grandparents. And that's like special to me because
Yeah.
I'm very close to my grandparents, or I was. But they both came, and my mom went up to my dad and gave him a hug. My older sister had graduated. I was graduating. My little sister was set to graduate 2 years later. So we all ended up graduating college on time. And my mom said, you know what? Like, we did it. Like, if nothing else, we raised 3 really good kids. And from then forward, we had Christmas together last year, like in the same house.
That's awesome.
And my mom is remarried, and I love my stepdad. My dad and my stepdad get along. My mom and my dad are not calling each other up to have drinks, just them 2. But
That's fine.
yeah, but when we're together, it's funny because like last Christmas, we've spent Thanksgivings together, birthdays together. This was the first Christmas because my sister had just had a baby. Babies will bring everyone together.
100%, absolutely.
So she said her first Christmas is going to be at our house around our tree. And again, whoever wants to be there, of course we were all coming. And my older sister who lives in New York even came. It was our entire family for the first time like ever for Christmas. And my mom, all of us played this game that I bought, and we were like literally in tears, laughing, crying. And half the time it's my mom and my dad making each other laugh. And I'm like, you guys had something in
There's history,
common because
one
you
way
were
or another,
married
yeah.
for 13 years. And then you have 3 kids who turned out pretty okay. So it was really cool to see them get to that point of like, and for us, it's made our like mental health and our life a lot better because we don't have to separate.
Yeah.
And we get to have those moments. And I publicly thanked them on Facebook a few months ago because I just said, like, that is the greatest gift you could ever give me, is I get to have these memories of everyone came to my house a few years in a row for Thanksgiving here, my house that I owned. I have my memory with my niece, her first Christmas, we have photos all together. I get to remember that amazing time of us laughing, crying together. Her life is not going to be marked by divorce.
Right.
She just has lots of family now. And that's because my sister's husband's parents are also divorced. And so she just has like 80 million grandparents, a million aunts and uncles. And that's beautiful to me because now we get to have those memories and they truly are lovely. They're not fake. It took time, but like they got there. And so the fact that you and your wife can already say that is amazing.
Yeah, it's something that I look to. Like, I will say that I had the greatest example in my dad. So my dad turned 75 this year. And when I say the greatest example is when people ask me if I'm ever going to get married again. And I have a friend of mine that I always say I'm hopelessly or delusionally hopeful sometimes. And it's like, yeah, I do. I really do, because I still believe in it. And my dad is the reason I believe in it. Because my dad and stepmom they just celebrated, I want to say, their 18th wedding anniversary.
I think my mom and my stepdad are like 15 or 16.
So my dad was 57
Wow.
when he got married. And they have the most amazing, adorable, healthy relationship. I love my stepmom dearly. I don't call her my stepmom. She's my mom. I say my parents are in town. They're actually in town right now.
Yeah, I call my stepdad by his name, but when I speak about them, they're my parents.
Yeah.
And he knows, like, when I get married, like, he's going to be involved just as much as my mom and my dad are, like
Oh yeah.
he's a parent.
Yeah, and like my dad. So my dad, when I lost my mom 11 years ago this Thanksgiving time from cancer.
Wow, I'm sorry.
And my dad, he lived in Portland. My mom lived in the Seattle area at the time. My grandmother, my mom's mom, lived just outside of Portland. My dad literally would pick her up and drive her to go see his ex-wife when she was going through chemo and in hospice weeks
That's
before she
amazing.
passed away. And
That's a good person.
if I am half the dad and man that my dad was and is, then my kids have it gold.
Yeah.
And so it's like I had the best example of what it was to be like, and encouraging, loving. Like all of his grandkids love him. Like, we were with the girls were with us, and it's like my oldest is like, when are we going to the bookstore? Because they know when they're with Papa Gary, then it is bookstore time. And so he has things that he's done, and he's changed as a man since I first got married and had kids. So he was a college professor and super strict in regards of education. And listen, I was an athlete that could care less and just wanted to pass so I could be involved in sports.
Right.
That's about it, right? But like he showed me what it was to be like and how to navigate having conversations. And it wasn't until my mom got sick and until my mom ended up passing, like I found out they were having conversations about us the entire time.
Yeah. That must have been really cool for you. Like,
Yeah.
obviously a very horrible time and horrible circumstances,
Right.
but to be able to know when your mom passed away that your dad still treated her with so much love and respect had to be
Totally.
very, very like relieving and peaceful for you.
Yeah.
Because I do think, if something happened to one of my parents, it would be similar. Even when like my mom's dad died, that was the first grandparent that I lost. And my dad was there just like devastated because he's like, my grandpa was an amazing man. And he's like, that's my children's grandfather. Like
Right.
So I know of like they would still, and like you said, there's history there. Like you don't just, I think about that amount of time with someone, whether it ends or whatever, that's someone that was in your life, like that's a fixture in your life.
Totally.
And then you have kids together. So of course you're always connected. But so going back to when you got divorced,
Okay.
you were still working in the church.
I was out of ministry.
You were
at
out of
that
ministry.
point.
Okay. But were you still in that same circle of people? Did you still go to were you still attending church? What
Oh,
was your
yeah.
relationship like with church then?
So I was still attending, and I was actually in helping. At that point, I was helping at the Crossing, kind of their college ministry, just a little bit.
Okay.
So I'd connected with the guy who was over then, was one of my really good friends here in town, and so involved in helping with that. And so, and we had been to 3 or 4 different churches and had been involved in working at 3 or 4 different churches in the Las Vegas area. And I just made the statement to myself. I'm like, listen, she can leave going to this church if she wants to, but I'm not. I'm like, I know the health of this church. I know 70% of the staff members, like for 5+ years.
Yeah.
I'm like, it doesn't matter.
And we've talked about on this podcast, like finding a
Yeah.
good church is not easy.
No.
So when
And
you
it's
do,
like,
it's like, I'm staying.
I'm saying I don't care. It might be awkward when we walk by each other, but it doesn't
That's
matter.
powerful too, though, because that's part of it.
Yeah.
Is like a divorce, like whose side are people going to be on? And can we still have the same friends? Can we still have the same church? And church should be a place that still welcomes you both back with open arms.
Totally. And it does. I mean, my ex-wife, she's involved in volunteering with baptism stuff. So she does that at our church.
Okay.
And
That's
so
awesome.
my kids, when she's doing that and they're with her, they help. So it's cool to see my kids helping her do that aspect. With me, there's other stuff that I'm involved in that I help out with and hang out with and do. So when they're with me, then they're helping me do that stuff.
Yeah.
So those are the types of things where it's like, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. There's still, the underlying thing is that our relationship with Jesus Christ is the same.
Yeah.
And that's where the basis is.
And that's
the
what
health.
you want to continuously have an example of for your kids.
Right.
And I think it's cool that they get to be at a church that you're both doing things at and see you both there, even if it's not through volunteering or something, just being there. I know for me as a kid, that would have been powerful. And it was. My parents continued to go to the same church also for a while. And it was nice because I knew I would see the other parent at church on Sunday, and it was like a warm hug.
Totally.
And it was a little bit of normalcy for just an hour.
Just a brief moment. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like we had an event at the church this last week, and it's like there was baptisms going on. So
She was there,
as we
yeah.
were leaving, I'm like, hey, go find your mom. She's at the baptism area. Go find her and just give her a hug. And so that stuff will happen. Or they're with her.
I feel
They're
like
like,
my
let me
inner
go find out.
child is like so happy right now. Like it's like in there like, oh, that sounds so lovely.
I mean, it's literally for me. It's like I'm gonna do everything I can to promote their mom to them.
Yeah, especially as girls, like man,
100%.
they need to see men treat women with respect and know that that's the only way we get down over here.
Yeah, and any boy trying to come into my girl's life, they're gonna listen. We can be all macho about it, but I will be damned if they do not have the best example in front of them.
Yeah.
That
And
they're gonna have to say, listen, if you're gonna have to get close to this guy over here
yeah.
to try to capture my heart.
Yeah. My dad is pretty scary in that regard. He's
Right.
not like a super large man, but he's intimidating. But he loves my two brother-in-laws. And so at my little sister's wedding, he like in his speech, he's like, well, Molly, you have a high bar to reach. I'm like, cool.
Yeah,
Can't even
thanks.
enjoy one
Appreciate
night.
that. Right.
No, but it's true. And they have set the bar high. And I love seeing my dad's relationship with them. And like, it makes me excited for the potential of a relationship with my dad and my future husband, because that is such an important thing. And so them knowing, and that's part of why I have such high standards, is just who my dad is and who my grandpas were, and knowing that I'm already fully loved by the most important man in my life. So I don't need to go, search for
Make it work.
or
Yeah.
go find an example of healthy love and search for that in the wrong places. They have it still, even if it's not romantic between you and their mom. It's still there's still love there.
Mutual respect in regards to like, listen, I love these children.
So
that
I love
you've
you.
helped me
yeah,
do
yeah,
and
yeah,
make.
yeah.
And there's no getting around
And
that at the
helping
end
you
of the day.
raise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And listen,
and
we're still partners at the end of the day.
exactly. And the most important partnership you'll ever have in your
100%.
life. Yeah. So when you started telling people that you knew from the church or, that were in church circles about the divorce, how was the reactions?
A lot of shock from some people. People who knew us more intimately, not necessarily shock, but just more sorrow. And unfortunately, like in any breakup, I'm sure you've experienced this regular breakup, there's always we're going to set up sides.
Yeah. Like I was talking about.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I really didn't entertain that game I probably did a little bit, if I'm completely honest, just in regards of like, I want to feel better about myself. Yeah, she's a piece of shit. Excuse my language, but like, like
The ego is still there
right,
deep
of course,
down.
exactly.
Especially in the
At the end
beginning.
of the day, feel bad for me because I'm this amazing person.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know what she's lost.
I think everyone listening can relate to that in a breakup.
Exactly. But there's always these things that like, let's pick up sides.
Yeah.
And it happens. There's friends that, unfortunately, that were super close, or I thought were super close, that I have not talked to in 8 years.
And there's like grieving in that, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, it's part of that living death.
Yeah.
Like that.
And were
It's
those
not
people
just-
from the church?
Mhm.
Yeah.
A lot
And
of
is
them.
that disappointing?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happened in twofold. So it happened when I stepped out of ministry from a large
Which
group of
again
people.
can be a whole other episode.
We can do it. I'm down for it. So it's nitty gritty. So
Yeah.
But then it happened when we went through the separation and divorce, and it's sometimes there's I need to defend my name
Yeah.
aspect
I
of
think
it,
that's
right?
a huge part of it.
And I just got to a point where I literally just kind of put my hands up and said, if you don't know who I am and my intentions and the person that is me and the person that I'm becoming, then you don't know me.
Yeah.
And if you are not walking in this with me, then you for sure don't know me.
Did you watch This Is Us?
No.
Oh, I was going to say.
First off, Molly, I am a male. I'm a single male that does not have a girlfriend that says, can we watch this show together?
It's amazing.
I'm sure, yes. And listen, and I'm a cry. I'm a sensitive guy.
you
I'll
would-
cry.
every
Yeah,
episode.
But that's not going to happen because, listen, unless there's a female next to me that's like, listen, I will kiss you at the end of this episode, but watch this with me.
No.
I'm probably not going to watch it.
There's a couple on it that everyone really loved. They met like through like a, like for lack of a better term, it was like a fat group, like a fat support group.
Sure.
And the male lost a bunch of weight, got a really good job, like really started bettering himself, and no one was wrong, but it kind of looked like he almost got like too good for her. And I'm
Hmm.
sure like that was some of it for you. Like you're like getting healthy and doing all these things that are good for you. So it's almost probably easier to make a villain out of you, because not saying like she's
No, no,
overweight
no.
or
Of course
anything,
not. No.
but there is something about the self-help, like getting healthy on your own aspect that I think a lot of people who are not healthy or happy with themselves
Hmm.
can't relate to. And so they look at it and they say, well, yeah, he just thinks he's like too good for you now or something. And I commend you for going on that journey still, because like you said, it was for so much more than just getting healthy from that relationship. But it's kind of sad sometimes when you do get healthy, how the very people at church
Yeah.
that should be the ones high-fiving you are actually really like contradictory to it.
Totally.
And it's because they're not aware that it's just a reflection. We always are just looking in a mirror.
Yeah.
And if you're doing something that triggers me, it's like when someone gets sober, right? And then their friend that still drinks but doesn't think they have an alcohol problem is like kind of weird about it. It's like that's because it's making them analyze their relationship with alcohol, right? And
Sure.
that's
And
how that probably was.
yeah, and that changed my dynamic with her,
Yeah.
right? Because there was that, and so there was tension in that process of me growing, and that process of her growing in
Yeah.
her own healing journey in regards to the relationship. And there's bitterness and anger and unforgiveness and all that stuff that we both had to walk down that journey.
Yeah.
And I know where I am. I don't necessarily know where she is, but it works for the kids, right?
Right.
It's at that point.
And
But I
that's all you have to worry about. Like the rest of it's her business at
Right.
this
And
point.
I still I go back to when I was talking about those panic attacks. April 9th, 2016 was the last day I had a panic attack.
Wow.
Last day. And I remember the next day waking up, and it was just through a process of all of it, right? Weight loss and therapy and, celebrate recovery and things like that. I remember going, I am not going to let these thoughts that are unhealthy define the person that I'm going to be. And so when we were going through the divorce process, that was very much a combative thought and process I had to work through every single day.
Yeah.
What does she think? What does she feel? How is this going? What is this going to look like?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's like, I need to.
It doesn't
and
matter.
it's totally 100% like a celebrate recovery. I'm going to make the next right decision.
Yeah.
And doing the best that I can. And listen, I still fail every day. I'm a human. I'm a
Yeah.
sinner. And it's the same thing in regards of trying to find a new relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's been a number of years since I've been divorced, and I've had a couple relationships here and there, but it's like even more so, it's like, what am I looking for? What do I need? And how am I the best person? I will say in those relationships, I was a much more true person of who I was in those
Yeah.
relationships. Unfortunately, they didn't work out, or fortunately, I don't know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I still have hope for the future, but I also know that I need to make the next right decision. You made a comment about secular relationships, and I've just got to the point where it's like, listen, if we aren't on this journey together at the very foundation of who I am as a person, the very foundation of who I am as a person is not, it's not a real estate agent. It's not a marathon guy. It's not a triathlon guy. It's not a father of 3 girls.
I was going to say, it's not even being a dad, which is so important.
It's not, being follically challenged. It's not being a redhead. It's not being a twin, a son, any of it. At the end of the day, the number one thing goes down to, I am a child of God. I am made in His image, and He has chosen me.
Yeah.
And if I can't be in a relationship with someone who lines up at the end of the day when our heads hit the pillow, who says, I don't know where we're going from here, but He's got us.
Yes, exactly.
If I don't have that, then I have nothing at the end of the day.
And that's kind of where I feel strongly about it too, because it's so hard to imagine being in those tough moments and not thinking about that person going to God. And the amount of things I learn just from the things I do every week to stay healthy with God, when I read the Bible, when I go to my small group, when I go
By
to
the
church.
way, I'm totally jealous of your small group. I
We're
know I
famous
messaged you
now.
that like a couple weeks ago. I'm like, dang, you got everybody in your small group.
I know. Someone came up to, like, after one of my episodes, someone came up to I forget who it was, someone at church, they're like, are you in that group too? It's like, we're famous now.
There you go.
I feel very lucky, but that actually being in that group helped me see how important it was. I'm like, you don't got to be the leader of the group. You don't have to be as eloquent as Luke or as willing to lead as Ryan, but you got to want to be there. And not just because I'm telling you, like, you have to see the value in it. And we have people in our group who don't say a lot. We have people like me who talk the whole time. But the common denominator is we all want to be there. And every time we leave, we are so thankful for each other. And we are so thankful for that hour and a half that we get. And it like excites me to think about someone being there with me, but also just that idea that I see how much I grow week to week with God. And I'm so much of a better person, partner, all those things. And I want someone else that's also doing that. And you can read all the self-help books you want. You can go to the gym all you want.
Yep.
But if you don't know your identity, like, you are going to at some point have an identity crisis that is probably going to lead to tension between you and I.
Absolutely.
And if I know that I can bring you back to that place of reminding you are a child of God and that means something to you, we'll probably be okay. It won't be easy, but we will get there, and we get to the same end point every time together then.
Right. And I challenge you in regards of the statement you made of, if I can get you to that point.
If I can get you to the point of reminding you that you're not like making you go to church or making you do anything.
Yeah. Okay. I get you. But
like, if
I
you
agree.
already
Like,
have that
hard,
basis.
It's hard navigating the idea of being 42, a father of 2 teenagers, one soon-to-be teenager, and then going, all right, jump into the dating pool. There's all of this chaos. And I'm just the type of person, maybe I'm just like a get off my lawn guy, but I refuse to get on a dating app.
Yeah.
I just don't care.
It's not for everybody. No. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, listen, I can only do so much with this face. So if you're going to judge me based off of whatever dashing picture or non-dashing picture I can put on a thing, that doesn't work. Personality will supersede all time. So it's like, I need to get to know somebody first.
I think that's been in general. Because even like some real, like someone everyone thinks is attractive, right? It does not even like begin to tell the story until you see their presence in person. So for me, I'm the same way. Like, dating apps inherently just don't work because they're just too much about that.
Yeah.
And I need to see how you treat people, how you walk into a room, how do you carry yourself, how do you speak to people. Like, it's just, there's way too much that goes into if someone's attractive beyond a photo.
Oh, totally. I think I have a pretty good idea of where I land on the spectrum. I always say like I'm a 6.5 on the look scale, but I'm like a 9 on the personality scale. So you have to know the personality before.
I'm dead.
But
You're like, I need to lead with my personality, not the other way around.
It doesn't work with just a picture because you're like, wow, all right.
I'm dead.
That's what we got. But so the idea of entering the dating pool is it's scary.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's scary in regards of being like, I'm not scared of being hurt again. I'm really not. When I say I'm scared, it's just the idea of like, where the heck am I going to find somebody?
Yeah.
And being in Vegas, it's a whole other animal.
It's a whole other animal.
Completely different animal.
Yeah.
I mean, I got friends that are believers and non-believers. They're like, dating in Vegas is terrible.
It's terrible for everybody. Believer, non-believer, divorced, single, parent, not like, there's just a lot of different, I don't know how to explain it. Like, it's just not like a normal young professional scene here.
Right.
So there's just like pockets there's industry people, there's sports people now, thank goodness.
Yeah, thankfully.
But other than that, it's like, it's a very interesting dynamic of people. I am with you there.
Yeah. And being the divorced person in their early 40s, it's a weird pocket in the church.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's you guys got married when, like, Pastor Shane, you got married when you guys were like 3 years old. That's awesome and amazing. You've been married forever and it's been wonderful. And then you have those marriages, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the widowers or the widows,
right?
Who, God bless them, they were married for 75 years and someone passed. Or you have someone like yourself who's early 30s, young professional, you're single, and you always have this like, oh, you're gonna find somebody, this like head tilt that
pity.
Like I've seen it.
It's the worst at weddings.
Guy. It's like,
if you go to a wedding alone, people are like, so when are you gonna have someone? I don't know. Why are you single? You tell me, Susan. You
Right.
tell me.
Yes.
Like, I hate that.
I literally I had a conversation with a friend of mine. I'm like, I'm not going to a wedding by myself. Why would I subject myself to that?
Honestly,
Joel, you're such a good guy. Well, yeah, no shit. Go tell somebody else.
I honestly never feel worse about being single than at weddings. I leave feeling horrible. But unless I'm there like in the wedding with like 20 of my closest friends,
Right.
but I have to a lot because I have clients that get married. They're all in their young 20s getting married right now. And I love it because usually I'm with other clients and it's fun. But inevitably, every wedding. So Molly,
Right.
because I haven't had a significant other the entire time I've been with my company. So everyone's just kind of like, okay, when is it happening? And I'm like, guys, this is not what my life revolves around. And when people ask me constantly, it makes it so it does. And I second guess myself. And I'm like, no. I'm very secure in where I'm at.
Right.
And most of the people asking those questions are not believers. And so when they do, it's hard to just explain to them why I'm so intentional and why I'm not worried.
Yeah, I'm single because I want to be, and not like I'm dating Jesus single, which by the way is the worst line I've ever heard of.
I've never used that and I never plan to.
We will not be friends anymore if you use that. I'm just dating Jesus. Shut up. Yeah. He's not going to pay for your dinner. But for me, it's the idea of like, I mean, you have the industry people that you can go to. You can, in regards of going to the wedding. For me, it's like if I go to a wedding and they're like, oh, you can bring somebody. I'm like, yeah, but then it's going to be like, I'm going to bring a friend who's a girl. And then it's going to be like, oh, you guys together? No, we're not together. But we're
I
just
don't
friends
even get the plus one.
Yeah.
Which would be nice sometimes. Like I have a client getting married in Puerto Rico in March. And I was like, you have to give me a plus one because
I will. I choose to tribute.
I'm like,
Puerto
I'm not
Rico.
going to a foreign country alone. And they will be busy getting married. And so I'm like, there might be other clients there. But I was like, no,
I will go as tribute. We'll get separate rooms. We can sit on separate planes. It doesn't matter to me.
I just both meet spouses there.
There you go. Bonus.
No, that is the one place that I go where I'm just like, guys, I promise you I'm happy.
Right.
And then it's like that pity voice. And it's like, and I think then I actually, in turn, for some of those people, I feel bad for them. Because I'm like, if you can go to, I actually said this recently, if you can go to a wedding single, you are one of the strongest people out there.
100%.
Because it is that space where everyone's hyper focused on it.
Yep.
And again, if they're not believers, they don't really believe me. Yeah. When I say like, no, like everything in my life that God has done has been on his timing. And when I surrender that to him, it has been better than I expected. Yeah. And I joke that all I did was miss my first divorce.
Bonus.
Not getting married in my 20s.
Yeah. And I think I want to say maybe 3 or 4 months ago, I actually had a very big throwdown with God about this specifically.
I like that, a throwdown.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, explain.
It was an all out, like it wasn't verbal screaming and yelling, but here's where it came down to. I am okay being single, but I am not happy being single.
Okay. So by okay, do you mean like at peace?
Right now, where God has me is single.
Okay.
But I'm not happy. I know that I was built and made to be in a relationship with somebody.
I think we all are, yeah.
And so,
like, God wants us to do life with someone. I believe that, like, firmly.
And so there is a point of being, like, I know what it is to be in a relationship. I know what it is to be in a healthy sexual relationship. I know what it is to be in a relationship where at times that my ex-wife and I were on the same page in A, B, and C things, right?
Yeah.
Where I had a partner. So it's that thing that I miss.
You see the beauty in it.
Yes, absolutely. So that's where it's like what I said before, the delusional optimism, where it's like, I know that that is out there.
Yeah.
I know that I can have that with somebody, and I am not satisfied with living this life
I think
single.
That's okay.
And and I
to
totally,
not be satisfied with, I don't want to call it like less than, because like what you have right now is everything God intends for you. But I think God puts these desires on a heart for a reason, and it's on your heart for a reason. Totally. And he will not fulfill that for you. So I think it's okay, because that almost means you believe him.
I totally believe him. And I in part of my conversation with him, I was like, listen, you say in your word that you will give me the desires of my heart. Mm-hmm. And you also said that it is not good for man to be alone.
Yeah.
So currently I am alone, and I do not want to be.
Yeah.
And so I came to the statement where I was like, either you take that desire away, which you do not contradict yourself, or you provide somebody not to quote unquote complete me, but to do life with, to honor you.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two options. And whenever that needs to happen, needs to happen. Granted, I look at my dad who was 57. That's 15 years from now. I'm like, dear Lord in heaven, give
I
me
know.
strength. But if
But you
that's what
did say you love their relationship.
I do. And so that's where it shows me that that can definitely happen.
Yeah.
And so I'm not satisfied with where I'm at. I am at peace with where I'm at because that's where he has me.
Right.
And I think that that is so, not to toot my own horn in that, but that is what is so detrimental in the church post-divorce.
Yeah.
Because there's this certain subset, right? We're not single. We've been in a relationship and married.
Yeah.
We're not married forever, but it's like this unclean
Yes. I
section
was
over
gonna
here we
say
don't
it's
want to
like,
talk about.
yeah, they
The
like,
scarlet letter of divorce,
Mhm.
right? And so then it's like, then it's the, oh, you're such a good guy. You're such a great dad. You would be. I'm like, yes, I know these things.
yeah, because I work on them myself.
You don't need to tell me. I did not like become the person I am just by waking up one day. I did not, naturally have a 6.5 face. But it's the idea of, yes, I know those things. And I think because people who are divorced are so used to having that partner connection, that instead of working truly on themselves and who they really need to be and who God desires them to be, they find it in somebody else very quickly in the church.
Yeah.
And that's why you see, at least in my experience, especially when I was a pastor, I always said, and still to this day, do not date anybody for a year post-divorce.
Yeah.
Because
To date yourself.
you need to find out the new identity that you are and
Mhm.
what God has for you, because you're just going to end up in the same position 3 years from now.
And God will give you the same test
100%.
over and over until you pass it, in the sense that you're refined the way he wants you to be, so that you can enter that next space.
Yeah.
And I want to like go back to what you said about being like having a throwdown. And I think people sometimes think, Christians, especially pastors and stuff, like we're just kind of floating through life, like it's fine. And when I say it, I mean it. I'm at
Yes.
peace. I'm okay with it, because I do know in my heart that God fulfills all of his promises. But it doesn't mean we don't have emotions
No.
that contradict that sometimes.
People would be shocked at the conversations that I have with God. And people, and
But I think God loves your honesty.
yeah, and it's like there's times like I'm like,
He
I
knows
have no
it
problem saying
anyway,
I
like,
am pissed off. I
yeah.
am beyond pissed off. I am
Mhm.
blankety blank pissed off.
Yeah.
And I am not happy.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I have chosen to live my life to serve you. So whatever you have in me isn't making me happy right now. But at the same time, there's nothing that I'm going to do that's going to force a situation or a place
That's
that is going to be healthier
the
or
point.
better for myself, my kids, my friends, and the people that I have influence on a regular basis.
I always say, like, that thing I think I want that God hasn't given me yet, if I force my way into it, I would be miserable every single day.
Right.
And I'm not willing to do that.
No.
And so, yes, it's frustrating sometimes. It
Mhm.
can be lonely. It can be sad. You can have your little pity party. But at the end of the day, you wake up every day and you say, I'm still going to choose your way. I'm going to drag my feet, but I'm still going to do it your way because I know it's better.
Yeah.
And that's like, I think the difference. And I'm not upset to the point where I'm just going to settle for the first person who looks in my direction. But I want you to know, I still really want this. So if you're still going to deliver it, now would be a good time.
Right. And if I can't do that, then I'm going to get desperation breath.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't want that.
So I'm in real estate and I tell other realtors that are having, a harder time, and I'm not the best by any means, but I think I serve my clients pretty well. And I'm like, listen, you cannot have a conversation like that with your client again on the phone. You
Mhm.
have sales breath. They
Yeah.
know that, and you're turning them off.
You can sense
your
that in
number
dating,
one
too.
goal in life is to make sure that they are in the house and they are happy.
Yeah.
That's number goal, not your commission. That's irrelevant.
And if
I
that,
made hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I've made literally I've made $1,100, and then I had to split that with somebody else, so I made like $600 on a deal.
yeah.
So I let the computers do the math. But it's the same thing in dating,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
People
like,
can like smell it from a mile away. You sit down at
100%.
dinner, you can tell.
and I still go through that as a guy.
Yeah.
It's like a conversation. Like I'll shoot a text or I'll, respond to an Instagram thing. I'm like, fuck, am I coming off? Excuse my language. Am I coming off like desperate? And it's like, well, no, I'm who I am. I
Yeah.
know at the end of the day, I'm very much an encourager. So I'm going to encourage you.
Right.
And if
And if
you
it's
don't
coming,
want that friendship,
yeah,
if you don't want that friendship, perfectly fine. I'm not offended.
if
There's
it's
other
coming
people that
from
I
a
can put that.
genuine place, then yeah,
Yeah.
you should have no shame in that,
Yeah.
because the right person will find you by you being you,
Yeah.
not by you being some version of you that you think someone would want. So you have to be true to who you are, who God wants you to be, but continuously through those seasons of frustration and stuff, allow him to refine you.
Totally.
Because if he's saying not right now, there's for a reason. You have to refine yourself in another way before you're ready, because you don't want to get divorced again, you know? So it's
I refuse. I would rather be single the rest of my life than get divorced again.
I think most people would agree with that.
And I don't think people go into second marriages thinking they're going to get divorced, obviously,
No,
unless they're
like, I
sick
gotta
and
write this
twisted.
time.
But at the same time, I know that that relationship will be defined in the dating aspect and engagement aspect of having Christ number one first,
Mm-hmm.
but also healthy as possible. I don't care if we're in therapy together and we've been dating for 2 months. It's not that type of idea.
That's
It's not
good.
weird for me.
Yeah, no, you
And
should be in
so
therapy together.
I've made the statement before that it's like, listen, I'm not dating to screw around or to get laid. I don't need that. That has no interest to me whatsoever.
Right.
I mean, physically, because I'm a human, there's
Right.
interest.
Right. But like long
that
term,
I,
that won't fulfill your
the
heart
point
needs.
is, like, if we're finding out that there is a long term and there's health in this, that we can move forward, then we can do that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, if it's push come to shove and you're done, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to force this relationship to stay with me to make it what are we going to do here? So
Right.
it's like we need to be better together and pushing ourselves to be better. I want to be encouraging someone at the same one when I'm doing something or I cross the finish line at a race, for them to be there and be like, good job, you're an idiot. I can't believe you did another race, but let's go have lunch. Like,
Yeah.
whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, it's like, I'm not getting divorced again. I'm just not.
Yeah. Well, then I hope you're willing to wait.
Obviously.
If God wants it. So I have two final questions. The first one is, what would you tell people that are in the church, whether it's they work there, they're just churchgoers, how could they be more supportive and encouraging to people who are going through a divorce or who are divorced or considering divorce, you know?
It's a good question. I didn't even prepare. And I was even thinking, it takes like 4 people play for me. I don't know what I'm going to say. So I'll give you 2 answers to that.
Okay.
One is never give me the pity face.
Okay. That's easy.
That is the most, you say it's easy.
I say easy in the sense that you kept it short.
Yes. It's not easy.
Write that down.
Oh.
Easy to write that down and remember. But yes,
When
harder
one person
to
gives me that head tilt. Oh my gosh. I think the second thing is to realize the depth of pain and destruction that a divorce is. It's a reverberating. It's like throwing a stone into a lake. It is something that will go on forever and ever and ever and for a very long time.
Mhm.
And it's not when the documents are signed. That is not the end of the pain.
Yeah.
And so that is something, the ripple effect on that aspect is something that will be there for a very long time. So I don't care if it's been 6 months, a year, just be like, hey, listen, you just went through a crazy tumultuous time the last couple of years. How are you processing with that?
Yeah.
If we are, as Christians, not checking with each other how we're doing on a regular basis, we are doing a disservice, not only to each other and ourselves, but we're doing a disservice to Christ, in my opinion.
I read a book by Sheryl Sandberg, the COO of Facebook, called Plan B, and it's about grief.
I've
And
read it.
yeah, and she says you should say, "How are you doing today?"
Mhm.
Not "How are you?" Because if you see someone at church, you say, "How are you?" They're just gonna say, "Good." If you say, "How are you doing today?"
Yeah,
they
because
might.
no one wants the real answer.
Yeah.
Then it's really awkward. Actually, I'm terrible today. I wanted to beat my children, but I realized it was against the law, so I didn't. And then it's like awkward pause in the hallway.
But that allows them to tell you in this moment, today is hard. I'm
Yep.
struggling today. Instead of, oh, it's fine. Because, yeah, I mean, they're alive, so they're fine, right? So if divorce is like grief, then I think that can be applied as well for people. Just like really hone in. How are you doing right now?
Yep.
The last question, and then we can close out, is how would you encourage someone who is contemplating divorce right now but nervous about how the church will receive it?
How the church will receive it does not matter in the spectrum of everyone's health involved. Parents, kids, brothers, sisters, friends. And if you are thinking about it, you've already gone. We're talking step J.
You know your
and
answer
step-
then.
and
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily divorce,
Yeah.
but you need to sit down with your spouse and say, we're either doing this together, which means we are fighting together, not against each other,
Yep.
or we need to do this in the healthiest and safest way possible to provide the least destruction that this is already going to cause.
Wow. That's a bar.
And so the idea of marriage, I don't know if you've seen the movie Forrest Gump, but there's a moment when they're both when they're in forces in Vietnam with Bubba, and it's torrential downpour. And Bubba looks at Forrest and he says, if I lean up against you and you lean up against me, it means we don't have to fall asleep with our heads in the mud.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many times that is marriage.
Yeah.
And if you are on the edge of talking to a lawyer or thinking that it's over, just realize that your partner might be the person that you can lean against, so you don't have to spend the rest of your life with your head in the mud.
Wow. Oh, mic drop. End on that. All right. No, that was really good. Thank you so much. I
Thank
know it's
you.
a weird, difficult topic to talk about, but I know it's going to bless someone. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me. I hope it does.
Of course. As usual, I got through the whole thing without sneezing, but I can't speak now. Please like, subscribe, rate, review, all the things on the platform you listen on. It helps reach more people out there that need to hear it. You can find us on Instagram at Where You're Planted Podcast. And as always, you can support us on Patreon. Or if you want to sponsor an episode, you can reach out to me via Instagram. Thank you so much.